What's up everybody, Kai here, and welcome to the third entry and episode of Tutorial Tuesday. Hopefully the previous episodes have been helping you guys out and you're starting to learn a thing or two about Photoshop and start to get your channel along the right path. This episode is going to be pretty exciting because we're going to actually start to get putting stuff on the Tutorial Tuesday YouTube. We're going to start with the YouTube and then work our way to the Twitter. We'll be doing a little bit, maybe a little different styles for each little thing, so that way you guys can see how to do some different techniques. If there's anything you specifically want to see, make sure to email me or the Tutorial Tuesday live email. All this stuff is in the description as always, or you can comment as well, and we'll be able to do that. So let's go ahead and get right into this because the last episode took a long time. We're going to try and make this one just a little bit faster. I know people don't like watching really long videos. So go ahead and open your background. No. You want to open your YouTube banner one, but I realized the other day that for the YouTube banner one, I didn't actually save it as a file, like I said to in the first episode, so we'll just have to do that from there, but that's okay. And then your logos that you worked with, which I'm going to be editing a little bit to make sure that it's perfect and really good for this episode. Oops, and not Skype. So let's go ahead and close that. Of course it wants to try and open and update and be frustrating. Excuse me. So is that gonna exit? Nope. There we go. Alright. No. Close. Whatever. It keeps trying to open it. Well, okay, now it's gone. Finally. Sorry about that. So, I think that's everything we want to have open for this one. So, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and prepare our YouTube file. If you remember, we went ahead and downloaded this image, and what this image is it tells you the areas where your background is going to show up on the different devices. In general, I tend to just design them for the desktop minimum range, try to keep everything within there, and then a little bit out from there, because that's usually what people are going to see, and it's usually what I see on my backgrounds. So using the rulers that you started using in the last episode, go ahead and drag them down and just line them up with the lines in this image. So that's going to be the main area that your logo is going to be in. Most people aren't going to be looking at your YouTube on TV, so you can design it so that it covers the entire page, but it's going to take up more space when you save it. So I wouldn't recommend doing it if you're just planning on designing for just the normal YouTuber. So the next thing you're going to want to go ahead and do is just drag some more guides out here for the minimums for the desktop and mobile, and then the last guidelines you're going to need is for the tablet, for people who are looking at it on a tablet. And then right there you're going to have the basic file that you're going to need to design YouTube backgrounds in. Again, there's all kinds of ways that you can come with these files. Tons of people have downloads, but you can see how easy it is to just make it for yourself, so they don't really see the point in downloading someone else's unless you just don't know a lot about Photoshop. But hopefully when you guys have been watching this, you are learning a little bit more as we go on. So you can leave that layer on there. You can change the opacity down so that it's not so visible, but you gotta put a layer below it first. Change the Oh, my numpad isn't on, that's why. There we go. Change the opacity down if you just want to have it just out of the way, but you can kind of see it. Something like that, maybe. If you want to, It's up to you. Usually I just get rid of it and just have a plain background to start with. The colors that you're going to be choosing are just going to depend on what you like. I usually try not to use any pure colors though. Try to avoid using like this really black and this really white. I've just found that it just doesn't look as good in my opinion. It looks better when you use kind of like a really dark gray or a really light gray. They just look a lot better in my opinion. But we'll be getting to that in a second. Let's go ahead and get to our little avatar thing that I made the last episode. I made it to look kind of like the Adobe Photoshop stuff. And it looks pretty good for the purposes of the tutorial. There were a couple other logos that were made as well. If you remember, there was just other little simple stuff like that. So as you can see, all kinds of stuff that you can do with your logos. And hopefully you guys have a logo ready for this part in the tutorial. Looking at them again, I do think that I do still want to use this Photoshop one. So this is the one that we're going to go ahead and edit and make just absolutely perfect so that it's ready to go. So the first thing I want to do is go ahead and get a square again. Or actually the first thing I'm going to do is go ahead and drag all of these. So we're going to make it bigger. So go ahead and oh shoot, that didn't line up just right. So because I moved it from the beginning. So go ahead and make sure everything's all lined up again. Select all of your layers using Control Select, and then go ahead and free transform those, and I'm just going to drag it all the way to the edges, or as close to the edges as we can get, which it doesn't need to be perfect. I kind of like it has that little bit of border on there that I can put some black in the background, and that looks pretty good. So now we're going to go ahead and get the rectangle for the outside. There's a couple ways you can do this. We used the rectangle tool last time, so let's just go ahead and do that again. Just click up here in this corner and then just hold shift and just drag it down, all the way down. Then there's your first rectangle, and we're going to go ahead and hide that. And then now we want to get the next rectangle at the same time, so just click in the corner and just shift drag down, and then you have your second rectangle, and that's pretty good. Go ahead and drag that above your other rectangle, make them both visible, and then you can either remake the layer styles or you can go ahead and just copy and paste the layer styles like I'm doing right here. And then go ahead and get rid of the other layers, and what this does is that those squares are perfect and it's not going to be blurry looking at all. Last thing I need to do is go ahead and cut the T's out of the darker blue. So I'll go ahead and Control click on that, and we have our little outline for the T's, and then I'm just going to select our rectangle layer, go ahead and right click, and then just hit rasterize layer, so that's just a regular rectangle. Go ahead and hit delete, and then deselect that. And there is our little logo. And looking at our little icons, it doesn't look too bad in my opinion, but we're going to go ahead and do a little touch up on it just to make sure that it is absolutely how I want mine to be when I start using it. So I do want to change the inner glow on this. I want to make it look a little bit more pronounced so that it looks like it's really digging into that. So I want to go ahead and spread that a little bit. Just like help it be very dark and really pronounced. But then I want to go ahead and make the blues just a little bit lighter. And that looks pretty good to me. I wonder what would happen. Throw a stroke on there. Maybe just up that just a little bit, and then lower the opacity just to give it a little bit more definition on that edge there. And then we want to go ahead and do the same thing to the outside edge. Go ahead and up the size of the stroke. Maybe even put that stroke on the inside actually, and then lower the opacity. And it just gives it some really nice definition. I'm actually going to go ahead and rasterize that layer as well. There we go. That way it didn't have that little black line. And when I did that, that stroke is a little bit light. So I want to go ahead and up that a little bit. And that just gives us a little bit of a nicer, more defined looking logo. I want to mess with the back rectangle as well because it looks a little bit plain in comparison now. So I'm actually what I'm going to do is I'm going to use these same kind of colors of blues, but I'm just going to increase the difference so that it's just a little bit, oops, just a little bit better looking. Let's do something like, just mess around with the colors until you get something you like a little better. And I like that a lot better now. As you can see, that's starting to look pretty good. I just want the background on the inside of this T to look a little bit better. So what we're going to do is actually go ahead and just bring that T up there, and then we can actually do layer effects to that T, and it will look like it's part of the back, but it actually won't be. So just paste that on there, and then I'm actually just going to take off the stroke, and then the gradient overlay looks pretty good, but we're going to change the glow on this. The inner glow, we're going to go ahead and add a little bit black. Let's see what we can kind of do with that. Or actually, let's go ahead and make that white, so it looks kind of like it's kind of popping out a little bit more. And then just lower the opacity down. And that just adds just a very slight variation. We'll go do the same thing with the outside rectangle. Just add a little bit of inner glow. Let's see what that's going to look like. Some light. And that looks pretty good to me. That's going to be the basics of it. And I think that's pretty good to save as the avatar for Tutorial Tuesday. After I go ahead and actually, let's just lower that a little bit. I like it dark, but a little bit too dark. Okay, that's pretty good. So the next thing we're going to want to go ahead and do is you can save this, so you can start using it for YouTube. Go ahead and go to File and Save for Web. And there is file size limits and everything too. But the best way to save it is just to do PNG24, and it doesn't need to be transparent because there's no background. You want to check transparency if you need to have it see-through for like an overlay, but this doesn't need to be transparent. So everything else, just go ahead and leave it the same, and then just hit save. And then let's go back to the Tutorial Tuesday, and Tutorial Tuesday logo is perfectly fine to save it as, and there we go. And that is ready to go. The only thing I didn't do was go ahead and create a layer at the very bottom, and then choose a dark gray that you just like the way it looks, and then just give that a black border. And I'm just going to go ahead and save that again real quick. Just replace that file, and then go ahead and save the avatar or your logo file. Now we can go ahead and get started on the background. There's a lot of different ways you can do this. Everybody has their own techniques. But I'm just going to do a really quick and easy way to do your very first background. And this is going to be really simple, and from here on we're going to go over all different kinds of techniques that you can do. But just for this episode, we're going to do something really simple. So I want to do like a really clean background. So I'm either going to do a dark gray or a light gray. So let's go ahead and start with a dark gray. And go ahead and go back to your other file. And you're going to want to bring this into your new one. And there's a tons of ways you can do this. You can either drag the layers into it, or you can go ahead and take your saved image and just drag that into it as well. And there's the logo, and then you can just drag that in there as well. My only problem is that for the avatar, I saved it with the black border around it, which isn't exactly going to be very good to work with, but it should be fine just for our purposes. So as you can see, it's quite large. So we're gonna want to go ahead and shrink it down, because obviously that's going to be way too big for the actual background. You're not going to be able to see it. So go ahead and free transform that, and then hold Shift and Alt, click on the corner, and just drag it down. And for now, I'm just going to drag it down just right until it fits. Just right in there. It just fits in there. And there you have your little avatar that you're going to see in your YouTube. And what I like to do is I like to go ahead and duplicate it at that size. So now I have one that's larger that I can manipulate if I make the other one too small and accidentally save it. I have one that I can go back to, so I don't have to go ahead and load it up again. So now we're just going to kind of mess around with this. There's all different, like I said, there's all different kinds of effects you can do. The first thing I want to do is work on the background image, though. Starting off, I'm not really going to use any kind of textures or anything. We're just going to use stuff that's right in Photoshop, because you can do all kinds of cool looking textures just working with Photoshop. So go ahead and click right above your background color and go ahead and create another layer. And what you're going to do is you're going to go ahead and grab the rectangle tool and just make a rectangle that goes right on top of these guidelines. And actually go ahead and drag that up to the very top of all of your stuff. And what this is going to do is we're going to make the parts that's going to kind of go over your banner and make it look like it is kind of sunk into the page a little bit more. So I'm going to go ahead and hide my guidelines using Control H. And let's go ahead and get this rectangle and do a color overlay of just dark gray. And then what I'm going to do after that is I'm going to go ahead and hit the, you can do this two ways. You can either use drop shadow or outer glow. Personally, I like to use outer glow. Go ahead and hit normal, and I'm just going to drag the opacity all the way up and make this a really dark gray as well. And then you're just going to drag your size out, and then you're just going to lower the opacity too. However you want it. You don't need anything too strong. Just enough to give it like a little bit of a kind of edge, just to make it look like it's just kind of above the pieces. So you're going to go ahead and bring back your guidelines, duplicate that layer, and free transform it. Just kind of just rotate it around and just drag it down until it lines up. And that's all you have to do for that. It's that easy. They have just a little bit of glow. And you can increase that if you want, but that's just how much I like to do it. And this is also where you might put your information for your backgrounds. In case you want to save this picture on DeviantArt or on some other website, that's how I do it as well. At least that's how I do it. So I haven't had any really requests for what kind of background people are looking for. So I'm just going to kind of mess around with some ideas that I have in my head right now and what I want it to look like for me. So looking at the logo I'm using, I think I actually want to go ahead and use a really light gray for my background instead. So just go ahead and replace that. And the problem being that with that light gray, there is going to be that black line on there. So I'm going to go ahead and just drag in the logo layers from the other save file and just use them instead, because they won't have the black. And then I can edit them if I think the black's too heavy. So let's go ahead and delete those other layers and just take these layers, go ahead and put them in a group. So just go ahead and click on this folder and then just drag all three in it. That way you can just click on the folder and drag it around. So I'm going to free transform that and just drag it down until it's pretty small. And for now, I'm going to go ahead and get rid of the drop shadow on the background. And also, let's go ahead and get rid of the stroke as well. That way, we can just work with something really flat, and we can edit it depending on what we end up doing with the actual background. So let's just drag that down until it fits in there nicely. Oh, and another problem that I didn't mention. So if you don't lock your layer styles, when you're resizing the image, the stroke will actually stay the same size. So what you want to do is when you go ahead and duplicate the layers you're dragging in there and hide the originals, because on these ones you want to go ahead and make it how you want. So like we'll disable the drop shadow and the stroke, but then we want to go ahead and combine all of these layers, because otherwise when we resize it, or you don't have to combine them. There's two ways you can do this. You can either combine them or lock the layer styles, because otherwise the layer styles are going to change as you shrink it. So we'll just go ahead and select all three, right click on them, and just hit rasterize layer style. So now when you change the size of it, it's not going to affect the actual size of the stroke. So we'll go ahead and select the whole group and Control T that, shift out the corner and just drag it down. And as you can see, the stroke stayed the same size this time. That way it looks a lot better. And as you can see, that looks a lot better on a white style background. So let me get a drink. We'll get right into this. So I'm just going to kind of mess around with some ideas that I have right now. I'm not exactly sure what I want to do with this yet. So we'll just kind of do stuff and I'll just kind of explain as I go along. So I'm going to make this a little bit smaller. I already duplicated it so that I have the little rasterized one down there. So that's a pretty good size for the logo. It's not too big, but it's not so small that you can't tell that it's the logo for the whole thing. So when you're dragging your guidelines, you want to click on the layer that you're dragging your guidelines in relation to. So I want to drag a guideline that's going to put the exact center of this page. So to do that, I need to go ahead and select the very background layer, so that when I drag a guideline out, it's going to actually snap on a little bit, see, to where the center is. So that's the center that way, and then we'll go and do it this way as well. And as you can see, it just locks right onto the center of that page. If I had selected if I still had the Tutorial Tuesday logo selected, it would actually lock onto the center of the Tutorial Tuesday logo instead of the back. So if you go ahead and Control T on your logo, you can actually see the center of the logo. And doing that, I can line it up perfectly with the center. And I think that's what I want to do for this idea. Then I'm going to go ahead and get those guidelines out of the way, because that was just to make sure that this is in the exact center of the page. So I think I want to go ahead and do maybe like a older style 2D one with like a banner. So there's a bunch of different ways you can do banners. We're going to do this pretty easily. We're just going to draw it real quick, and it doesn't have to be perfect, you know. For yours, you will spend a little bit more time on this, but what I'm going to do is just get you could do this a couple different ways. Probably go ahead and get the rectangle tool, and then you're just going to drag out the banner how big you want it. And I don't want it quite big enough to go around this. I just kind of want it a little bit in, like, behind it, just like something about maybe that size, and we'll just drag it just behind it so that I can kind of see what I want to do with this. And that shape I did, it turned out just fine. Just the color isn't anything, so I'm just going to throw a quick color overlay on that. We can edit that later, it doesn't really matter. Probably the next best thing to do, I'm not sure how I want to show you guys how to do the next part. Well, it doesn't have to be perfect, so what you can do is go ahead and do this. Go ahead and rasterize the layer of your rectangle so that it's editable. And then just go ahead and go to the edge right here. And what you're going to do is just using your guidelines to show the center of the page, go ahead and drag your rectangle until it is on the center perfectly behind your logo. And then grab the pen tool, and then starting on the corner, just go ahead and click, and then just click however far you want the edge of the banner to be. So just let's do about right there. And then now you're just going to click right on the other corner of the banner, and then just click all the way up at the top, and now you have this little triangle on the banner. Go ahead and right click and then hit Make Selection with 0 pixels, and now you have this little triangle selection on the edge there. With the rectangle layer selected, just go ahead and hit Delete and then deselect that. And as you can see now on that side, we have this kind of classic YouTube style little banner cutout. And you could do that, or you could leave it flat. I'll go ahead and do both, one side each way, just so you can see what it looks like and decide what you want to do. The next step is you need to do the bottom pieces of the banner. So there's a couple different ways you can do this. I just like to go ahead and duplicate that layer, just drag it down, and we're going to go ahead and make it just a little bit of a different color so it's a little easier to work with. It needs to go under it, and we're going to need 2 of those. So all you're going to do is just drag that over, and then there's your second part of the banner. It's that simple. You can leave it the same size. What I like to do is go ahead and actually make that a little, just make it a little skinnier, something like that. Looks pretty good. And it's up to you how far you want it to go out, you know, how big of a banner you want this to be, how far you want the piece to go down. Just kind of mess around with it until you get something that you like. And I think something like that looks just fine. It doesn't have to be anything really fancy or anything really humongous. So the next step is you need to make the piece that connects the banner so that it looks like an actual banner. And we'll add in all the drop shadows and stuff later. So go ahead and get your pen tool again. And what you're going to do is you can drag guidelines if you want. You don't necessarily need to use guidelines, but you want to click right here on the point of the top of your piece, and then it just needs to go however far you want the angle to look. Like if you want it to look like it's a really sharp folded piece, you can do like that, or you can just do it a little bit. Usually just try and look at your edge and just decide how much you want it to look, and that looks pretty good. So now you're just going to go ahead and click right up here, just go ahead and click into there and then just close it off, and that's good enough. Go ahead and create a new layer and then fill this. Right click and fill path and just hit OK, and then delete path. Right click and delete path, and we're going to go ahead and throw a color overlay on that and just make it a red kind of in between those, and we'll mess with all the colors later on. This is just to show. And then that needs to go under the main piece. So the next step that you would do, for me, I need to go ahead and duplicate that layer and flip it horizontally so that I can go ahead and throw it right over here. It uses the same side. Whether or not it's square, it's going to be the same angle. And the next step you want to go ahead and do is select the piece right here, and then get your little box selector, and then you're going to delete everything to the side of that little piece, just like that. And as you can see, you're starting to kind of see this little banner style type thing. And then we'll go ahead and do the rectangle side as well. Just go ahead and delete up to there. And actually, I just realized that I was doing this the whole time with a rectangle end. You could do a rectangle ended banner, but that's not quite what I was going to do. I was actually going to do it like this. So let's go ahead and just flip that around like that, because I think that's what I'm going to actually end up using. But go ahead and delete all the way up to the edge of that middle piece, just like the other side. And there you go. As you can see, it's really the simple way to do the 2 styles of the banners. You just really got to choose which one you like, and of course you can do any shape you want, but we're going to go ahead and do this square shape. So what I'm actually going to do is just delete that layer, delete that layer, and then on the very top one, I'm just going to delete that half. So there is our little kind of banner. Looking at it now, I do want to go ahead and make this a little bit skinnier, so we're going to free transform that and then just drag it down. And that's looking pretty good. Even with just those colors, as you can see, if you just do slight variations in color, you can make it look like it's a really good banner. But I'm going to go ahead and show you how to do the layer styles so that it actually looks like it's over the correct pieces. But the first thing we're going to need to do is select all the pieces of that banner, duplicate it, transform it horizontally, and just drag it over so that we have a full banner now. A full, very simple banner, but a banner nonetheless. And then you're going to want to go ahead and combine all your pieces so that the square right here is completely connected. So the first thing you need to do is go ahead and decide how hard of an edge you want on this. You can leave it just like this and just do a drop shadow, or you can put a stroke on it or do a gradient overlay, anything you want to do with it. I will be doing a gradient overlay, and it's actually going to be, let's bring up my logo again, probably some kind of blue. Gradient. So let's just see what we can get just by kind of messing around a little bit. That's a blue, but it's a little bit intense for our purposes. Doesn't really go with it. That looks pretty good right there. I really like that. I'll have to mess with the edge of this a little bit to make it match better, but that coloring looks pretty good to me. So I'm going to go ahead and actually put that on the rest of the layers by right-clicking and hitting Copy Layer Style. Select the rest of them, right-click, and Paste Layer Style. And as you can see, we have our little banner all colored out now. So now we're going to go ahead and work on the glows so that it looks right. So let's actually go ahead and select the big box, and then you want to go ahead and do Drop Shadow. And you're going to go ahead and uncheck Use Global Light. And now it's kind of pointing down. We want to go ahead and just make sure it points completely down, so just go ahead and make it 90 degrees. And then I always drag the opacity all the way up and set it to normal with your black or your dark gray, whatever color you want to use. And then you work with the size of it. So just kind of spread it out to where just mainly on the bottom and then just a little bit on the edges, just like that. And then now you're just going to drag the opacity down. That way it just looks kind of like it's overlaying it just a little bit. So I'm actually going to go ahead and copy that layer style again, because that's going to work pretty well for the rest of them, I think. Go ahead and paste that on the rest of those layer styles. And as you can see, even just something as simple as that makes it look like the banner is actually kind of bending. But you do want to keep working with the colors until you get it just right. So I actually think I want to go ahead and do just a color overlay on all of these, just to keep it really simple, instead of doing the gradient overlay. So let's start with this top one. Make it some kind of blue. Not exactly sure what kind of blue. You can always select the blue in here if you wanted to use the same blue, or maybe select it just to have something to go off of and then just go something kind of light. That looks okay. Something like that maybe. Actually, let's go ahead and do the dark blue. Do something with the dark blue I think will look really good. And then now you're just going to edit the rest of them to be just a little bit lighter than that darker blue. So we want that one to be just a little bit lighter, or actually a little bit darker. Then we're going to copy that layer style and put it onto the other layer too, right there. And now we're going to work on the very bottom layers. And we're going to make that the lighter color again. Copy that layer style and paste it on the other little side. And that's starting to look pretty good. As you can see, it kind of looks like it bends down. You didn't have to use any gradient overlays or anything. It's up to you if you do. I'm just decided that for this one, I don't think I do. I do want to edit the size of the banner though, because the edges of the banner are a little bit too close to the actual logo. So what I'm going to do is go ahead and actually split, or we don't need to split it, but I'm going to stretch out, oops, I'm going to stretch out the rectangle piece. So I'm going to go ahead and just do Control T on the rectangle piece and then Shift Alt and just drag it out. And that looks pretty good, about that long. And then you need to go ahead and select the pieces and just drag them until they line up again with your banner. So as you can see, just do like right there, and that lines up. And then just line up your other side as well. And right, perfect, just like that. Your banner's a little bit more out. And you can, as you can see, if I go ahead and get rid of the logo, you got yourself a nice little banner there. And you could use just the banner too. And doing that, I think I actually want to go ahead and drag the logo behind the banner like that. Something like this, maybe. You just kind of mess around with whatever ideas you see until you get something that you like. So I do want to go ahead and make sure that this banner is completely centered. Same with my logo. Something like that. That's looking pretty good so far. So I think we're actually going to go ahead and end it for this week. I know that usually I go through an entire tutorial on one day, but this episode's getting really long and I wasn't going quick enough. So hopefully you guys will still come back for the next episode and you will enjoy seeing the rest of this, where we will finish this background up and hopefully come out with something that is going to be pretty good looking for the Tutorial Tuesday. And we'll help you guys understand a little bit more about stuff you can do in Photoshop. So thank you guys for watching. Look forward to the rest of this tutorial next Tuesday.